Tape 7, Saturday. Crop rotations.
I erupted from the sewer tube like the ignited spark of a Roman candle, soaring hundreds of feet into the air, momentarily hovering at the top of my arc like the reincarnation of Icarus in the orbit of the sun. Well, that's what I said on the last tape. In reality, I fell 2 feet into a drainage pond on the edge of a cornfield. And that is the result of sewer smog-induced psychosis. Oh, my head. If I'd ever had a legitimate excuse to surrender, this was it. I barely made it out of the sewer. My recorded conversations were getting more and more far-fetched, if they'd ever taken place at all. Honestly, I wasn't sure if any of the things I'd experienced in the past few hours had been real or just sewer fume hallucinations. I could still smell the deep funk vinegar stench of that ravenous SCOBY, but it had been a few days since I'd had a shower. Maybe that smell was me. What a way to go. Sure, I'd been a great detective once, but these days I had a nasty habit of landing face down in the nearest puddle. My reflexes were muddy, my head was a mess, and I'd even started running out of tapes. A rookie move if there ever was one. Why not just admit defeat? But better for Ruby to find my bones on the shore than as a puffed-up water corpse with a crawfish face mask. Part-time detective tip number 3, never let a shellfish near your eyes. I heaved my body from the marsh and collapsed on the edge of the cattail-fringed pond. From the corner of my eye, I saw the severed torso of the mannequin, its head and legs in the middle distance. Everyone I love gets hurt. My exhaustion closed around me like a fist, and... wait a minute, I can't let Ruby find me like this. Withered away next to some department store Johnny who took me for a ride and then left me for dead. None of that, by the way, was poetic. That all actually happened. Anyway, Ruby deserves better. To know that even though I was washed up, I died with dignity. Because I love Ruby. Dorito! Plain as day, standing atop a ladder from a thicket of corn, eerily frozen, arms outstretched, their head so round. Oh, that's a scarecrow. I noted the absence of birds. There's an absence of birds. And that I could no longer tell the difference between my voice and my narrations. Yes, I can. This is my voice. You're the narrator. Are you sure? I thought you were the narrator. No, me? How could I be the... Honestly, I don't know. Fine, I'll do it. My mysterious illness, sewer concussion, stomach full of approximately 3 liters of trash brine, and recent pondside faceplant were compounding with interest, and I doubted my mortality took IOUs. I passed through the cornfield, crunching hundreds of dead bugs beneath my feet. Mannequins, scarecrows, and most likely cicadas. The only thing alive in this field is the corn. Oh, and me, barely. I followed the scarecrows like checkpoints, hoping they were leading me towards something and not away from it. It was evening now, and I had no idea how many miles that sewer pipe had carried me from Skid Row. I had to come up with a plan, and fast. Even with a full moon, I'd never be able to find my way out of this field in the dark. But then the dense walls of corn opened onto a mowed path, about 6 feet across, arced in both directions. A tractor path? A combine harvester? What's the difference between a tractor and a combine harvester? Beep, 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 Ruby, I need you. I turned to see a woman with a shiny pyramid of tinfoil atop her head driving a scarecrow into the dirt. What's with everyone in these freaking hats? My mind raced back to the apparition I'd seen at the top of my post-sewer pipe flight. I could have sworn there was some kind of San Franciscan flying saucer. Tinfoil hat? UFOs? I've got it! We're standing in a crop circle! The woman tells me the straw men aren't scarecrows, but scare aliens. Says she's being hunted, that it's always been this way, ever since she was a baby. I flicked on my recorder. Part-time detective case note number 48. I'm speaking to a woman who was convinced she was going to be abducted by aliens. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am Marie, and I was convinced that I was going to be abducted by aliens and was terrified.
How early did this suspicion start?
So I was quite young. I must have been about 7 or 8. No, younger than that. This trauma started as most traumas start for people who have siblings. I have an older brother, and he was in the basement watching TV one day, and I wanted to know what was up. So I came down, and he was watching a documentary about people who had been abducted by aliens. And so I
Okay.
asked him what he was watching, and he said, "It's a movie about aliens, and if you don't watch it, you're a baby."
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay.
So, I'm not a baby, so
Yeah, that's right, and you had to prove it.
but I
Yeah.
had to prove it, so I sat and I watched this documentary, and it was, people talking about how they had been abducted. The one man was talking about how they had amputated his finger. Someone else talked about how they abducted her dog, and the dog never came back. It was just, like, terrifying stories of alien abductions. None that were, like, "Oh, a warm light lifted me up," like, nothing of the
Right.
sort.
Right. You're losing limbs and pets and all sorts of things
Yeah, and your mind, really.
in your
So
mind. Yeah.
so then
And do you think your brother believed in aliens at the time?
I think so, but I think that he was older than me, so I think he was able to just be like, "These people are probably not telling the truth."
Mhm.
But it left this, like, deep-seated fear in me that lasted into my adulthood. This is so embarrassing. Whenever I was married and I remember a plane was flying by, and I said to my husband, "Are we sure it's a plane?" Like, I was so scared.
Wow, wow. Does he believe? What did he say?
So he believes that there's aliens, but he thinks I'm literally out to lunch because he's like, "That is clearly a plane, like, it's
Okay.
clearly a
Okay.
plane."
Right, that's not what a UFO looks like.
No, I didn't get up and look.
I mean, it makes sense. That had been stewing in you for, decades. So I'm curious, and you probably can't remember that documentary, but did they show any sort of artist renderings of aliens? Like, what did you imagine them to look like?
I feel from what I remember, it wasn't artist renderings, it was just, like, talking heads, scary music in the background, and very, very detailed accounts of these people's abduction. But soon after we watched this documentary, we went to Muskoka to my uncle's cottage, and for some reason or another, he had magazines out that were all about Roswell aliens. And so I saw this magazine and there's like the grays, like the quintessential like iPhone emoji looking alien.
Right. Sort of like an ice cream cone shaped head and those big bug
Mhm.
eyes. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. And so that just terrified me even more because I was like, this is here they are. It's real. It's in print. This isn't a magazine, right?
Not just anyone can print something.
As a child, that's like I remember like walking by like tabloids and being like, it's in the newspaper. This is real. Like
Yeah.
I really thought these were real. So
You weren't alone.
yes, yes. So I was like, Jesus comes to Utah and aliens have landed here in Hamilton, Ontario. Like it's crazy.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Were you living like in an urban area or were you a little more rural? Was it sort of crop circle danger? I gestured to the fields around us. Or what did you think would happen?
So definitely we were suburbs. So like I don't know why it couldn't compute with me that like this is probably not gonna happen here. But also like these people in this documentary, I'm like, they look like me. I don't know if they live out in a cornfield.
Now she gestured to the fields around us.
I have no idea, right? So
Right.
I was convinced we had a very large backyard and I was like totally big enough for a ship to land, 100%.
Hmm.
But we lived in suburbia. And I do remember after watching this documentary, my parents bought my sister and I bunk beds, and I had been dying for bunk beds. And they were pink, wrought iron pink bunk beds with like hearts all over them. And my older brother, this is what I mean by older brother trauma.
Oh no.
He not just did he make me watch this documentary, he comes into my room and I'm the older sister, so I get top bunk and he says to me, "You know, if you're on the top bunk, you're closer to the aliens. It'll be easier for them to get you." And I made my dad take those bunk beds down the same day he put them up.
And you'd wanted that for
I
ages.
was
And
so afraid forever.
like, unless they're ripping the roof off, it just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. But in my brain, I'm like,
Of course.
of course I'm closer to the sky. if I'm up on this bed.
That's right, if they travel 10 light years, that 5 feet is gonna make all the difference.
Yeah, they want me.
That's right. Oh my god.
I know.
Well, they might be that lazy, who knows? So you were picturing sort of this gray tabloid alien,
Mhm.
exactly as a sort of National Enquirer central casting,
Yes.
and then did you think they were coming in a ship? Were they gonna beam you up, or were they gonna land and come grab you?
So I thought they were going to land. I
Mhm.
thought they were going to somehow they must have this technology. If they can travel here, they've got good technology. They had the technology to somehow float to my window or possibly hover with the craft out of my bedroom window. They could open the bedroom window, no problem. Because they can open locks. They're so brilliant. And then they were going to come through my bedroom window and they were going to take me.
Did you have any reason why they would take you? Was there something like a quality about you you thought would appeal to aliens?
Because I knew about them. I was on to them, and they had to eliminate
Oh.
me because I knew.
You knew too much, but what your brother knew a lot too. Were you worried they would get him?
I felt like he wasn't afraid enough of them. So because I was afraid, it was like, I'm gonna be running through the streets screaming, "Aliens are real, and they're gonna come get us and chop our fingers off and steal our dogs." And so
Right.
they wanted to silence me.
You were the one person who could sort of alert the world.
Yeah, or one of. I'm not the only person they're abducting, but in my household, I would have been the one that they abducted for sure because of my big mouth.
Right, and you were the smartest in your 8-year-old mind.
Definitely not I did not think I was the smartest, but I was definitely the loudest, and I knew that. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
just as dangerous. So that's really interesting. So they kind of had maybe done some recon and they knew the people who knew and were gonna be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Or they would just see you running through the street and just nip you up
Yes.
when you were screaming. Okay.
Yeah.
So how bad did this get?
Oh, it actually, like, it's not even I'm laughing now because I laugh. I'm like, "Oh my god, what how embarrassing." But, it wasn't funny at the time. So, I remember I would go to my mom's bedroom every night, and I would be like, "Can you come lay in my bed with me until I fall asleep?" And so she would come and lay in my bed with me till I fell asleep for so long until, like, I was too big for her and me to fit in the bed together. Then I started going into my parents' room in the middle of the night and sleeping on the floor beside their bed.
So they just didn't have sex for like a decade.
Yeah, because of me, my poor or during the day when I was at school maybe, like, that's the only time
Sh
they could have done it,
Sure, who
because
knows?
now I know why my dad was so high strung. So so then I started sleeping on the floor in their bedroom, and then I remember one Halloween, they had friends over, and so I fell asleep in my parents' bed, and I guess my mom was like, "I'll just sleep in her bed, dad can sleep in this bed, whatever," and that night, there was this old radio my dad liked to listen to old radio shows, when he would fall asleep, and one of them, because it was Halloween, they were playing I think it was called War of the Worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
So they played that. I was asleep when it was on, so I didn't hear it, and then it was off, like, I never woke up during this at all. At this point, I was smart enough to know this is an old radio show, and I think they talked about the commotion it caused and how it was not real, so I wasn't afraid of it.
Right.
I had fallen asleep, my dad had fallen asleep, but my dad, he slept like, he didn't always sleepwalk, not always, but this night, he sleptwalk. So I'll never forget this. He must have been dreaming about it because he had just listened to War of the Worlds, and he woke up, leaned over, tapped me, woke me up, pointed out of his balcony, like, door, and went, "Look, there's a UFO." And I went, "Dad!" Like, I was so
Oh my
afraid. And then
goodness.
he goes, "Sorry, I didn't know it was you." And he's like, "Go back to sleep." All the while he's still sleeping. He is sleep talking, he's sleepwalking. He has no idea this is occurring.
And you will never sleep again.
My god, never, never.
Also, did you think he was an alien and had been, like, possessed or
No,
something?
no, I
Okay.
didn't think that,
Mhm.
but I was like, he saw a UFO and he's trying to be like, "Don't worry about it, don't worry about it." But I was like, "It's here." I
Right. My parent told me,
It's true. So I'm laying in bed, like, stiff as a board, eyes wide open, breathing heavily.
and he's gone back to sleep.
He rolled over. This is where I was like, "It's real. Oh my god, it's really, really, really real." He gets up and leaves the bedroom and goes to my bedroom. which was right next door to his. So I'm like, "What is this man doing?" And I'm afraid because I'm like, "I'm alone. You've left me alone and there's a UFO."
Now both of your parents are sleeping in your bed and you're alone in their bed. Your house has chaos.
So, just wait. And it's a big house. It's really, really big. It's got, like, 5 bedrooms, like, it's a big house. So it's scary because I'm like, "What's around any corner?"
Right.
Eventually, I gather the strength because I'm like, "I'm either gonna get abducted from this bed or I'm gonna get abducted with the rest of my family." So
Uh-huh.
I'll get up and I go to my bedroom and I'm expecting to find him, like, in bed or something. He is standing at my bedroom window with the window open, looking up into the sky. And I was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
"What are you looking at? What do you see out there? Like, there's a UFO." I know it. So then he was like, "Sorry, sorry." So he goes back to his bed, he falls asleep, and I was like, "I'm staying here with mom. I'm not
Yeah.
going
y-
anywhere."
Yeah.
So that was terrifying. So then
When you woke up the next day, did you say, "Hey dad, let's talk about last night"?
I sure did, sorry. So the next day, I had told my mom that night because I climbed into bed with my mom and I was like,
Right.
"Mom, ma, whatever." And my mom was like, "Oh my god." Like, so she told my dad before I woke up, what had happened. So then I come downstairs and my dad's laughing because obviously he's an adult and he thinks it
Yes.
is it is funny. As an adult
Yes.
looking back objectively, it's very funny. So he
'Cause they already knew you were afraid of aliens, right?
Exactly,
Yes,
like, the
okay.
worst child to have been sleeping
Yes.
in that bed that night would have been me, and that's what
Oh
happened,
my
so
goodness.
he was laughing and he apologized, and he was just like, I was sleepwalking, I don't remember any of that happening, I did not see a UFO." It was from that radio program we had listened to, like, I was dreaming about it, obviously, I, like, apologized and said he was sleepwalking, but I was like, "He's either telling me the truth or he's telling me this so I don't panic." Like, I wasn't fully convinced that he
Right, yeah.
hadn't seen a UFO.
There was nothing they could say at that point.
No, and now in adulthood, when we tell this story and he's around and we laugh, he'll always make a joke and be like, "Yeah, I did see one, but I didn't want you to freak out." And I was like, "Oh, you're such a liar."
Oh
So,
my
like,
god, you're, like,
yeah.
still a little afraid when he says that.
Yes.
Okay, so he says that he cannot soothe you.
Right. It's like you have unleashed, like, the worst anxiety that I've ever felt in my life. It got bad to the point where, like I mentioned, the planes, every time a plane would go by, I would start having a panic attack. What I would do in my child brain, what made sense, and then I carried it into adulthood, into, like, my teens. I was in high school for sure. I would stay in bed with, like, a light on, and I would read books all night because smartphones didn't exist, so I wasn't on
Mhm.
TikTok, and so I would read books all night until I could see the sun coming up, and when the sun came up, it was safe for me to go to sleep because it was light out and they didn't have the cover of darkness to hide behind.
I see, so the UFOs won't fly during the day. They can, but they choose not to.
They
Okay,
choose not to, and if they do, it's in secluded areas, not in suburbia.
okay,
So, I would wait till the sun came up, so it'd be, like, 5 in the morning, and I'd fall asleep, and then I'd have to get up at, like, 8 a.m. to go to school.
yeah, and you would be exhausted.
Right, and my mom was like, "This is not normal, this is not healthy, this is not, like, for her brain, like, her developing brain, this is not okay." So she
Mhm.
took me to our pediatrician, and our pediatrician put me on Ativan to try to
Just for the compulsive fear.
just for
Wow.
this. So she told me how to take it because you have to, like, put it under your tongue and wait for it to dissolve. Take it before bed, this will help. Trevor, it did not help.
You're kidding.
I was so scared. I was on drugs as a child and
Right.
still having panic attacks about aliens
Your
because
body fought through the Ativan.
yes,
Wow.
yes,
Wow,
yes.
that's actually kind of impressive in retrospect.
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? Really cool. So it was just like, "We're just gonna have to, like, fight through this," like, or basically she was just like, "I admit defeat, like, this is just something she's afraid of,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna have to work through it together, and if she sleeps on my floor, she sleeps on my floor, like, at least she's sleeping, right?" Like,
Yeah, that's right.
so that's what we did, and then I think I probably slept on their bedroom floor almost every night until I was probably, like, 16 years old,
Wow.
17.
Wow.
And then it wasn't that I wasn't scared, it was just I didn't need to be in my mom's room anymore for some reason. Like, I was still scared every time a plane flew by. I was still scared that they were gonna come get me. Anytime camping or cottaging, I was like, "Here it is. This is it. It's the end. I'm going to
That's
Mars." Like,
right.
it was so bad.
This is especially fascinating to me because if it was sort of a terrestrial fear, like an axe murderer or something, I could see how
Mhm.
being next to my two parents could up my odds of survival.
Sure.
With aliens and a UFO, like, I wonder if they would come to get you and then see mom and dad and be like, "This is too risky. Let's go back out."
Sure.
But in your mind, it really felt safer.
So in adulthood, I sought therapy. So I went to a therapist. And at this point, as an adult, like I was married or I was engaged the first time I ever went to therapy.
Mm.
And I had brought up this fear, and she was like, "You're not afraid of simply being abducted. It's that your family is gone. You're not with your family anymore." So I realized in that moment, I was like, yes, because I always felt like not that if I was with my mom, they wouldn't get me, but that my mom would come with me or my dad would come with me.
Oh, wow. So you weren't so much afraid of it happening, but you just wanted the whole crew to go.
Yes, and so then things started clicking where I was like, "Yes," because let's talk about terrestrial things. I wasn't afraid of aliens coming during the day, but you know what I was really afraid of? Getting kidnapped,
Losing the family.
losing my family, and so I think that came from my mom. When I was really little, I would want to go their house backed onto this big park, and there was a playground, and I wanted to go to the park by myself, and she would say, "No," and I would ask, "Why? Why? Why?" And she had 4 kids.
Oh, wow.
She doesn't have time to talk to me about all of the reasons why I, as a child, can't go to a park alone.
That's right.
One day, just said to me, "Have you never heard of Ted Bundy?" And then told me the story of Ted Bundy.
How old were you?
I probably like 5 or 6, like, so
I think
little.
it might have been a calmer home environment if you had been abducted.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
Okay, you heard the whole story.
So it was like being abducted of any kind, but I didn't realize that, right? It was
Yeah.
those were 2 totally separate things that I was afraid of. I didn't realize it was, no, you're just afraid of not having your family, of, like, being taken from your family and not having them with you until much later in life.
That makes sense, but the alien fear won out over Ted Bundy.
Yes,
Ted Bundy was not really concerned.
right, because that was something I could mitigate,
I
right?
see. Yeah. Imagine if you'd been abducted. What if it was like an Oliver's Twist situation where so many children had been kidnapped? You've like a new family.
You know what? I would be lying if I hadn't fantasized some days.
I mean, it's who knows now, right? You can't regret. It's not worth it. And so you said you still believe now. Is that correct?
I do, yeah, totally. I've got friends and family who, like, have UFO stories or alien stories. My mother-in-law has, like, a really good one where she woke up the one night and her whole room was red. It was like a red light, and so she, like, blinked a few times, rubbed her eyes, really made sure she wasn't dreaming, and then she was like, "I'm gonna close my eyes, put the covers over my head. I can't whatever this is not like, I can't do anything about it."
It's a fair response. Yeah.
And the next morning, they found their dog on the top bunk of a bunk bed with no ladder.
I'm so curious why an alien would do that.
Beats me, but the one lady in the documentary had her dog abducted.
Oh, right. And again, bunk beds.
Again, bunk beds, see? I was right to take those
Maybe you were
down.
right. Maybe you were right. So if you think, and I'm not being facetious here, I really mean this. If aliens were to land,
Mhm.
what what kind of behavior or signal could they perform where you would feel safe and you'd be willing to go make contact? Like how could they communicate that they didn't want to hurt you?
So I'm gonna be so real with you. If an alien landed, I feel like there would be no communication that would need to be done because I feel like our world is on fire. I'd be
Yeah.
like, "Take me where you are
Yes.
because this place is not for me. I don't belong here. You should have taken me a long time ago, actually."
Yeah. So do you feel like though your overarching feeling about aliens now is fear or wonder? What is it?
Definitely wonder. You know what? I'm not even afraid of them anymore. of them coming to abduct me. I don't think that they're coming to abduct me anymore. If they're coming, I feel like I think they're already here, but I also
You
think
think
that
they're on Earth now?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't wanna sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist because I promise I'm not, but,
No,
like,
no, no.
I think at least I don't know if I subscribe to the belief that, like, they're here and disguised as humans, like, I don't know if I believe that, but I believe that, like, they've made contact with the higher ups, like, government officials for sure, and that they've been here, they're probably here in, like, some type of government base or something, talking with our
Oh,
armies, whatever, like, really high up secret
yeah.
service type deal. Area 51 type of thing, I think,
Okay.
like some type of underground bunker or like a bunker in a mountain somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Like, yeah, like maybe like in a Denver mountain somewhere.
Okay. Just to like hide them away because there'd be trouble if people found them.
I think maybe at the beginning when they first were, like, making contact with us, they were probably just snatching up anyone that they could snatch up,
Okay.
and now they know, like, they know who's in charge, and they know who they need to talk to about things.
Right. They pulled up a few dogs and went, oh, these are not the people we should be talking to. We should go for humans.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I truthfully have gone I'm not even joking, I've truthfully gone from being so afraid of being abducted to being like, "Well, maybe there's hope for Earth. Here's actually how you can get clean water to everyone."
And we'd be like, no thanks, not
Yeah.
interested.
So true. Our billionaires would be like, "Actually, no, thank you."
That sounds like a loss in profit.
Yeah.
But wow, I mean, what an optimistic note to end this discussion on. I would hope they
Mhm.
can bring us something that gives us some answers.
Fingers crossed.
Marie told me where to find the road, so I left her to her straw men. Good luck!
I felt like he wasn't afraid enough of them.
Are you talking to me?
No.
Okay,
Why?
uh,
Why? Why?
it's okay.
Have you never heard of Ted Bundy?
No, it's okay.
Sure, sure.
Okay, okay. Goodbye. Marie's story had confirmed that no one was safe from whatever contagion was out there, no matter how cute, small, or pathetically defenseless. Even the OBMs had it wrong. Children weren't the target. Well, not the only one. Animals were too. I thought back to Lauren's story about the pelican who carried a dog out to sea for a swim, or more likely, a sink. What drives us to prey on the defenseless? Is it the swift joy of an easy target? Or do we all have it coming? I mean, we've all made mistakes, me more than most. Maybe we all deserve our punishments and innocence is just an act. Little Sherbert, the sweet kid who kicked off this whole case, had nearly killed me, and the reason I was presently limping through this cornfield was a botched escape from a baby. Maybe those aliens and pelicans aren't the ones we should watch out for. They're just trying to protect us. Twilight was falling, a bad sign. I pushed through a thick wall of cornstalks to find myself staring into an empty clearing beneath a dusky abyss. No road. That's what I get for trusting someone in a tinfoil hat. Wait, what's that? Emerging in contrast to the sinking sun was a towering neon sign. But due to my growing assortment of maladies, my eyes wouldn't focus. I walked towards the glow, drawn like a moth, periodically slowing to try and read the sign like some kind of an open-air eye test. No vehicles? No vaccines? What the hell does that say? I trudged onwards, and though the sign was now looming above me, it remained illegible. And then I looked down to see one of those old motels. You know, the kind that hang off the edge of the world. The ones they sing about, where you can check out but never leave. A young man sat behind the front desk, next to a solid wall of keyless metal hooks. How could a motel in the middle of a cornfield have no vacancies? Before I could ask, the guy tells me he got into the hotel business through an imaginary door, one that only he could see. Huh, another actor. I flicked on my recorder. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Eduardo Valdesol.
So you were in a national television campaign in which you played. Who was this character? What would you describe his job as?
Yeah, it was a campaign for Hulu that came out summer of 2022, and kind of bellhop, kind of motel clerk of like a 1950s kind of seedy sort of roadside motel.
Do you think he also owned the hotel?
You know, I think that there's definitely some sort of stake or investment within the property itself for sure. I think it's probably the most logical perspective on it just because the reality is like I had so much tea. in terms of understanding what was going on room to room, person to person.
That's the thing. You seem to know everything. You had access to all the keys, and you were also the only staff member there.
Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, we did have a couple of other staff members, but would I say that it was a skeleton crew? For sure.
Interesting, because your character has a lot of sort of alpha energy where he seems like someone who thinks he's in charge, even if he's not
Mhm.
necessarily in charge.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the reality is, how does the authority sort of break down of this scenario, right? It's very laissez-faire here, honestly. No one's going to talk about anything. It's kind of a come and go as you please sort of thing, right? What happens at a motel stays at a motel.
So let's talk about this motel, this hotel.
Yeah.
What goes on there? What happens at this hotel?
Honestly, I really like to exercise discretion when it does come to the guests. I won't lie, it's a policy of respect.
Okay.
However, what I can certainly divulge is that people really do come to sort of have a good time, let out some of their inner inhibitions, if you will. It's an opportunity to really indulge in their specific interests, hobbies, vices, things like that.
Why do you think the value of that kind of liminal space is, like somewhere you can go to figure it out?
Mm.
And do you have something in your own life you use?
I love that question. I mean, I think the value of a liminal space is this idea that you can be absolutely nobody and you could be anybody. It's this sort of cleansing point, if you will, where you can kind of take off the mask, apply a new one if you want, and indulge in that if you'd like. And maybe that's something you take with you after the fact, or you leave it behind there and you come back to it at another time. But I think for the value of self exploration and just even getting to understand oneself better, I think a liminal space like a motel lobby in the middle of 2 a.m., why not?
Right. And you're, of course, an actor. So, I mean, you spend your time pretending to be someone else. Do you find that makes it more confusing who you are, or does it show you who you are?
Hmm. I think that's a really good question. I think, the reality is there's a lot more commonality between human being to human being than there is differences, honestly. And so it's just simply a matter of taking a moment to sit and be immersed in everything that's being given to you and find sort of the relatability within that. I think sometimes it's funny, you work on certain projects and you kind of walk away with maybe a newly discovered facet of yourself for sure. But yeah.
What's an example of a facet you've recently discovered?
Oh my gosh. All right. One is that I think I realize I'm a little bit more of a romantic than I think I had ever sort of have given myself, I guess, the space to sort of be, and that comes from the fact of having worked in right now at the moment I work in a lot of voiceover, specifically like dubbing for anime, and a lot of the shows that I've happened to like be working on right now have sort of a kind of romantic type of trope to them, if you will. And so there's a lot of exploration within that. And what's really fascinating is a lot of it is sort of queer coming of age romance love stories, which for somebody like myself who is now in their 30s, and so it's funny getting to go back now into these stories, playing the 17-year-old who's falling in love for the first time. And of course you relate to that through your own experience as a human being, but then it does sort of give you the opportunity to investigate. I work with a therapist who talks about there's the culmination of all the selves within us. And she says, kind of as a base example for however many years we are, old, that's however many versions of us that exist within us. And so it's funny getting to allow the 16, 17-year-old version of me to kind of come to the table and kind of re-experience some of those things, if you will. And I think yeah, it was a very lovely surprise. So I'm realizing, I'm like, oh yeah, there is very much the romantic, hopeless romantic kind of very much like, like sort of teen nostalgia that kind of comes in that I didn't realize was so palpable at that time. But, I think at the time it didn't have the space to breathe.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, in the case of representation and finding yourself through characters, etc., in this sort of art imitating life, imitating art, etc. cycle, do you think one has more sway over the other, or is it equal footing?
It's a good question. I think it's I don't know. I mean, I think it feels like a chicken or the egg question a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, I think both have to feed into one another. I have to ask myself sometimes when I'm working on a particular character or a particular piece of work, I have to ask myself, what are sort of the potential ramifications of telling this story and how does it carry outside of this space? I think for myself, like I had that kind of investigatory sort of question for myself when I was initially starting out, and I wearing a nice little polo and stuff like that, and I've got like this kind of crew cut, but When I first started out, I had a shaved head. I've got tattoos kind of all over. And so it's really funny. I used to go out for these, like gangster roles, these, sort of drug cartel members, military members, things like that. And it was always really fun to do those characters. And they were typically on like sort of if we're talking about like, okay, like what is the spectrum of, of protagonist to antagonist, right? They're the bad guy or the foil to the hero of the story. But sometimes what I found with these types of stories is that sometimes by my person, like my own body, inhabiting these particular characters and these particular stories, I realized sometimes there was the potential for it to maybe reinforce certain negative stereotypes regarding, what it means to be brown in this country. And so one of the things I had to reconcile was understanding that like if there isn't nuance, if there isn't complexity, if there isn't the opportunity to delve deeper into this particular life and story, this is potentially something that would reinforce a negative stereotype or harm somebody that does happen to look like that and existing peacefully in society. In good conscience, I don't know that I could necessarily go and fully do that work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, with that in mind, who do you think this hotel bellhop is representing? Who's going to see this story and say, that's me?
um, did you ever watch like Cabaret, like the musical?
Yeah, of course.
Of course, okay. So yeah, I think of like the maitre d' or the MC, right? Played by Joel Grey originally, and he's this sort of like kind of impish little sly wry kind of character that is, I think, able to kind of penetrate sort of the mask or kind of the facade of any particular person, and without judgment, just simply offer an in and say, this is the opportunity for you to explore that, to let it be, being that we are in such a really strong era of censorship, not just on, like sort of a media format, but even just in like a personal day-to-day life in terms of what it means to have to consistently, sort of mask and hide things. It's sort of a little wink and a nod from this sort of really fun character that I got to play to just simply to allow yourself to find a space and to be yourself, and that there are people out there who would happily be your chosen community and be the witness to what it is that you want to express. It's kind of a place where it exists somewhere between two defined points. It's one of those places where you can find it if you want to find it, and if you're not looking for it, you'd easily pass it by.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I've learned things I didn't know by talking to you. Eduardo's crisp polo, youthful glow, and minor split personality disorder had inspired me. I'd found him in his nameless hotel for a reason. So what? The detective I'd become was a joke. Death kept turning up like a bad penny. I couldn't look myself in the mirror without almost throwing up, and I'd fallen in love with a royalty-free AI-powered speaker on wheels who only answered my calls because they were programmed to do so. This haunted hotel was the perfect place for a fresh start.
It's this sort of cleansing point, if you will, where you can kind of take off the mask, apply a new one if you want.
I want. Thanks, Eduardo. I couldn't let Eve, the OBMs, and some angry babies interfere with the pursuit of justice. My fear of failure would not scare me away from my sacred duty. I'd given up on child gymnastics, and maybe I'd never be the next Carrie Strug. But I could still be one hell of a part-time detective. It was time to get back to the city. I turned to get one last look at the hotel, but it was already gone. Instead, I was a few meters from a dilapidated farmhouse. My instinct told me it wasn't Marie's. This place was too top bunk, and by that I mean above ground. With one knock, the door fell inwards off its hinges. Hello? A thick layer of dust, punctuated by the occasional cobweb, coated every visible surface. On the kitchen table sat a plate of half-eaten food, and a cup of tea so ancient that even the maggots marched on in search of fresher cuisine. What happened here? Oh, God! Across the room, sunken so deeply into an armchair that they were practically upholstered, was a human being. Just barely. It was the most exhausted-looking person I'd ever seen. Psst, blink if you can hear me. They did. Once I confirmed they were alive and capable of speech, I flicked on my recorder. Part-time detective case note number 50. I'm speaking to a former tea witch and retired vegetable farmer. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Adrian, and I am a retired farmer and a new gardener, I guess is how I like to frame it.
I love that. So, how did you journey into farming, and then why did you transition from farming to gardening?
Hmm. Yeah. How do I make this short? Okay. So I was introduced to farming by a friend of mine who got a property and was starting a farm, a small organic farm, market garden, they call them, around an acre in size, north of Montreal. And she asked me to come and help out with some stuff while they were setting it up. And I didn't know anything about that kind of agriculture. Yeah, long story short, just got hooked. I thought it was beautiful and cool, and I was like, it's gonna save the world, and I want to do that too. The young brain.
Okay, I'm sensing that's not how you felt when you finished.
Yeah, things change. It's amazing what's revealed over time. But yeah, growing food is still a wonderful, beautiful act. But I don't know if like a million small, tiny farms that just sell vegetables to rich people are really like the answer to all of our problems.
Okay, wow. So what was, do you think, your biggest looking back naivete going into small scale farming?
Ooh, I guess like, gosh, it's so like bucolic and like Instagram happy. There's so much like presentation of it as this like gorgeous lifestyle where you're like in nature and you're just like with plants every day. And isn't that going to be so beautiful? And like, obviously, the back-breaking work and heartbreak of like failure after failure is not represented.
Oh, wow. Because of the sort of slow nature, like you talked about, I sense that, like, in other lines of work, you make a mistake, you're like, ah, damn, and then you work to repair it.
Mhm.
But because of the slow speed of farming, I guess your mistakes take a long time to reveal themselves sometimes and an incredibly long time to repair if you can at all. Was that your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you have like a year basically until you can try the thing again that you fucked up.
Oh my God.
So you're like, okay, well, we'll try these again next year. It's like if you miss your window for planting tomatoes because something went wrong with all your tomatoes, like you're kind of screwed. This isn't California. Like we don't have this sort of nonstop summer. It's very.
Right. You've got a finite window.
Yeah, that makes it hard, and like it's something that you learn to just deal with and sort of that's why it's good to like grow a huge variety of things because you can sort of it's like, okay, we're not gonna have tomatoes this year, so we can like shift and
Right. Hedge your bets.
yeah, and just be like a lettuce farm for the year. Whatever.
Were you mainly growing vegetables? Did you grow any fruit? Were there edible flowers or like
Mm.
flowers that you sold to florists? What was the whole thing entailing?
It was mostly veg. We definitely like had huge eyes in like our first year. We were like, we're gonna do edible flowers. We're gonna do pick your own. Yeah, just big dreams, like 80 different types of vegetables and fruits. And obviously it just doesn't quite work out that way because so many crazy things happen.
Right. And there were two of you, right?
Yeah, there's just two of us, and we were about an acre, and it was all like human scale. So we didn't have a huge tractor or anything. We used like a walk behind tractor, which is essentially like a lawnmower that you can sort of swap out implements on. They're awesome, but like they're brutal on your body. And
Right. Are there any vegetables now that you maybe no longer enjoy? Or are there ones as a result of this experience you've sort of been seduced by, you have a fondness for you didn't before?
I'm like obsessed with growing onions.
Like bulb onions, green onions, which ones?
Yeah, both, but mostly bulb onions. So, like, growing them for storage is really fun. The tops fall over to let you know that they're ready to be pulled out of the ground, and then you cure them, which is really
Wow.
fun. But you can also, before their tops fall down, they have these big, beautiful green tops that you can also eat as like green onions.
So there's a lot of sort of, I'm also curious because I know trees communicate through roots. And
Mm-hmm.
so is there any kind of vegetable communication that happens?
Between each other, yeah, I mean like a lot of like the fungal systems underground are
Oh.
like plants interact with each other through their mycelium, through the mycelium in the soil.
So they could infect one another through the fungal systems in the mycelium.
In fact, I don't know if if they
Okay.
infect each other or
Okay.
like if diseases spread through that. I don't know. Like definitely like bacteria can like stay in the soil from a previous crop. Like that's why people do crop rotations. That's a big reason why.
Okay.
Because like pests will like either like lay their eggs and overwinter in the soil or bacteria. like diseases, like fungal diseases can also like stay in the soil where you grew that crop. And so
Oh,
you would do a crop rotation so that you're growing like a different family of vegetable that isn't affected by like say downy mildew or something,
okay.
so that you can kind of like break the cycle.
And once that fungus is in the soil, for example, and you break the cycle, will it go away or is it always in the soil?
That's a good question. I think there's like shelf lives for fungus,
Okay.
probably that like some will last for a long time and you'd have to do a longer rotation of like several years before you could grow that thing again. Like I know there's like an awful thing called black rot, which we thankfully never had, but it affects garlic and other alliums
Uh-huh.
and leeks, and it's like a pretty rough go for people who get black rot. I think it's like people stop growing garlic for like years.
Oh, it could just like spread through a crop.
Yeah, yeah.
Where do these things come from? Are they native to the area, or because we transport so much fruit and veg, could it just come from somewhere else?
Yeah, I don't know actually. Like in terms of like bacteria, like a lot of bacterial diseases and like fungal diseases that plants get are spread through insects
Hmm.
that like carry them around. Like a good example of that is a cucumber beetle,
Not a Christmas beetle, but I'll take it.
which just eats the shit out of cucumber plants, and like
Oh,
they eat the leaves and like they fly around and they're always like fucking each other, and
sounds like super brute
you
behavior.
can see them everywhere, and they'll spread like a fungal disease like between plants, and so if you have one, then it's only a matter of time before they all get spread.
Oh my God, that's so interesting. There's also something kind of dark about a lot of these pests you're talking about seem to be named for the thing they destroy, which
Yeah,
is kind of like a weird thing to carry around with you.
it is. Yeah, they can't escape it.
No, it's not optimistic at all. It's very sort of
Mm-mm.
like a pessimistic ideal. If you were
Mm.
to be named for the thing you most often destroy, what would your name be?
My gosh.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, not at all. I'm just thinking of like garden things that I destroy, and like I want to be a thistle killer because we had such a horrible thistle problem at the farm.
Those are the spiky things, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they like, oh my gosh. So they spread through like their roots. If you like till and the root gets like cut up into a bunch of pieces, like each of those pieces creates a new thistle plant. And so they're like virtually impossible to get rid of unless you're like going in very carefully and pulling out each one and making sure you get like the whole root, which is obviously no one's going to do that in a large scale. So
Because you could just have thousands of them.
yeah. Oh my gosh. We had I can't even, it was like picture like a cornfield, except it's all thistles and they're
Oh my gosh.
like 7 feet tall and like the worst spikes ever. Like you can't walk through it. They're beautiful flowers. Like the bees love them. They're like a
Yeah.
great pollinator, but they're so horrible for human flesh. And even with gloves, like they go right through. And like even after you kill them, like they'll dry up on the ground. If you just like throw them on the ground, they'll dry up there. But they're like the spikes remain forever. So
Oh,
they're just
right.
everywhere. Yeah.
Even after death.
Even after death.
What would you do? I mean, when you had thistles, would you just plant somewhere else?
I just like cry a lot. Like,
Okay.
yeah, it was really like a lot of sad days in the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that takes us to your departure. So you kind of surrendered to the earth.
Surrendered to the earth, there was a lot of reasons for departing, but some of the like psychological warfare that happens in the field is like, yeah, the really horrible weeds, perennial weeds, and the pest infestations. We had a really bad pest infestation
Uh,
in our seedlings.
I can't imagine. I guess one of the good things about a finite or, changeable climate is that things kind of die off typically at least once a year versus some places where those thistles can just grow 365. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
how do you grow anything? Just abandon the country.
Exactly. Or just like mow a lot, but like you can't mow in your garden beds for obvious reasons.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, it's really hard. And this is like going back to, having this really like rose-colored glasses view of farming before we went into it. It was like nobody really talks about the really hard parts of organic gardening, organic farming, that like people who farm non-organically and who have like all these like chemical terrible ways to deal with, or mechanical ways to deal with these things, these pressures, we can't use them and like don't want to use them, but it comes at a real cost.
God, I can't imagine how hard that would be. And yeah, certainly I've seen a lot of farming PR that makes it
uh,
look idyllic.
Oh, so nice, delicious, right?
That's right.
Beautiful straight lines, like Beautiful
Yes.
veg everywhere, dark, rich soil.
Yeah, there's always a pie in the windowsill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, fresh steamy pie.
Always a fresh, steamy pie.
Mm.
So why don't we end on a more positive note? My final question for you is, if you could return from a long day of thistle pulling to find any fresh, steamy pie in the windowsill, which one would it be?
Strawberry rhubarb.
Yes.
Yes.
There was only one answer.
There's only one answer, and it's like, gotta have the tart.
Adrian told me this had been the most energy she'd exerted since she surrendered her fields to the fickle hand of Mother Nature. She needed sleep imminently and indefinitely. When I asked how to get back to the city, how do I get back to the city? She told me to take her crank car, nodding her chin in acknowledgement of 2 atrophied arms. I understood. Her driving days were over. Sleep well, Thistle Killer. But she was already out. Oh my god, I should send someone to fix her doors. She's gonna get robbed. I found the crank car, a 1959 Renault Dauphine, parked by the edge of a gravel road. Its namesake metal crank appeared to be lying on its hood, but honestly, I'd seen this kind of thing in old black and white movies, but I had no idea how to do it myself. Beetleep, psychotic memory hallucination Ruby, are you there? Crickets. I opened the hood and found a trunk. Which means this car, much like 1996 Atlanta Summer Olympics gold medalist Carrie Strug, holds its power in its haunches. I walked to the back to discover a hole dead center in the Renault's rear fender, inserted the crank, and summoned the dank dregs of my strength to turn the metal handle. Ugh, holy hell, this is hard. Part-time detective tip number 34. If you have to sweat to start a machine, you're the machine. Oh my god. In addition to being a union buster, assimilationist, and on-the-record anti-Semite, Henry Ford must have had amazing arms. I rolled down the window, another crank, and let the night air clear my head. One of the headlights was busted, but I could see well enough to stay on the road. I wonder if this thing has a working radio. Oh, come on, I love that song. But we were too far from the radio tower. I turned the dial.
And I hate to say this, I really do, but I have reason to believe that Detective Campbell is trying to hurt my child.
What the hell?
If you've just tuned in, I'm speaking to respected widow Eve Majors, sitting president and co-founder of the family-focused not-profit One Bajillion Moms. Ms. Majors, Detective Campbell is the washed-up part-time detective that you hired to uncover the queer contagion. Why would he want to hurt your child?
Well, Marv, can I call you Marv?
I have incredibly low self-esteem. You can call me whatever you want.
I hired Detective Campbell because up until a couple of years ago, he was the most highly reputed part-time detective in the city. Then, a disgraceful accident ended his career. Oh, we all make mistakes. And as a mother, I believe every well-intentioned person deserves a second chance.
Tell that to my ex-wife.
But then, I discovered that Detective Campbell was not well-intentioned. He's been secretly communicating with little Sherbert, that's my child, and had a dark agenda of his own.
And why would he do that? Double-cross you?
Marv, we all have a secret ambition.
Mine's not a secret. I just want my ex-wife.
On a human level, I admire Detective Campbell's conviction. But as a mother and a community leader, I have to call him what he is. A liar. A thief. And a threat to children everywhere.
Unbelievable.
And as soon as we have him in custody, I intend to prove it.
If you could say something to Detective Campbell right now, what would it be?
For your own safety, and for the safety of our children. Turn yourself in, Detective.
And if you could say something to my ex-wife?
Just ignore her.
I whipped my head to the right to see Eve's pinafore kid in the passenger seat. Little Sherbert? What? How?
Find the three-pronged pyramid.
Their eyes spiraled and their mouth fell slack, emitting a powdery burst of sour-smelling neon foam. I gasped, choking on a foamy mouthful of my own. My head pounded, my vision blurred, and the world exploded into a blinding wall of cotton candy-colored light.
To be continued. The tape has ended. Please insert the next tape and press play now.
Queerial is presented by You Made Me Queer and the Sonar Network. It's produced, written, hosted, and co-edited by me, Trevor Campbell. Editing by me and Harlow Castillo, and mixing exclusively by Harlow. This episode featured Marie Adoranti, Eduardo Vildasol, Adrian Chalaturnik, Andrew Scanlon, Rachel Britton, Johanna Sharman Cecilia, and a text-to-speech avatar named Kimberly as Ruby 3000. You can learn more about them and their work in our show notes. Our theme and all of our music is by Kritty. For more of her work, check out lavenderbruisers.bandcamp.com. You can find extra clues and case notes for this episode at trevorcampbell.ca/Queerial. We're on Instagram at YouMadeMeQueer. If you want to stay on the case, subscribe to Queerial in your favorite podcast app. Until next time, be careful out there. Things are getting queer.